welcome to our first toy stop. I'm going to share a bunch of figures from my collection in the DC Direct line. These are probably figures that you haven't seen. They weren't widely distributed. They were only available in comic book stores. The figures I'm going to share are Batman and Robin, Aquaman and Aqualad, Green Arrow and Speedy, Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl, Darkseid and Orion, and the Joker and Batgirl. Okay, Batman and Robin DC Direct figures. These guys are pretty cool, actually. There's some really great sculptural detail in the face. The finish work is pretty nice. I do like the very comic book sort of coloration of them. The flat tones are kind of nice with the shiny black. They've done a really nice job on some of the finish work. These figures didn't have a ton of articulation. They had articulation at the ankles and the knees and a little bit of motion in the hips, the elbows, and the shoulders, and that's it. I think maybe the heads, the heads may move too. That's not a ton of articulation when you think about the modern action figures we see today with 30 points of articulation. These figures were created to really go along with a comic book so that you could take home some type of physical representation of the comic books. And that's really what the DC Direct figures were sort of all about. So they do that very well. And it comes with this display base here, which is pretty cool. And each one of these figures has like little pegs that you put in, and then it can sit in the display base. It also comes with these little batarangs, which are pretty cool. And this box is also from the Silver Age, and there was a TV show that was out in the 60s with Burt Ward and Adam West. Everybody knows it. When I was a kid, that was the TV show to watch, even though it was from the 60s and it was the 70s. Things were syndicated and lasted for like 10 years. There weren't a lot of TV content out there. So this was the show that all the Robin sayings were like, "Holy knit one, pearl two." It was kind of a running joke where you would just say all these kinds of crazy things. Holy bouncing boilerplate. I mean, it's the old buddy Aquaman back again, this time in DC Direct form, riding his giant seahorse, very consistent with DC Comics and the Super Friends as well. But boy, oh boy, they sure made him pretty happy. Aquaman and Aqualad came together in a set, and boy, oh boy, these guys are pretty dorky. Get a little bit more of a view of the seahorse. The sculpt of the seahorse is really good. Boy, the articulation on these figures is really crappy. I've done a lot of just action figure spins lately on this turntable, and never have I had one look like it's some kind of wonky carousel. This Aqualad presentation is insane. This is the box for Aquaman and Aqualad. Obviously, the figures were in this main window, and then the seahorse and the thing that Aqualad sits on, the weird wave. Doesn't feel very comic booky to me. The back is a little bit better. You can see, some of these were comped up before they actually made the figure. Aqualad could not look up like that. His head couldn't turn up and face you, so it can only turn to its side, which has made it look even more ridiculous than this. But if you thought maybe I was messing around with the figures, this is the way they intended them to be displayed. And wowee, that is something else. And to say the mighty king of the seas, oh, look, Aquaman riding the... I should have set that up. Aquaman riding, they all could ride the wave. Gotta love the aqua dudes. Batgirl and the Joker, pretty decent sculpt. Again, these are DC Direct figures. They don't have a lot of articulation. So the sculpts tend to be fairly decent because of that. A lot of the classic comic sort of look and feel with Barbara Gordon as Batgirl from the comics with the black suit, and the Joker is pretty much classic Joker all around. How he's appeared in a number of animated series as well as the Super Friends. This Batgirl and Joker set was pretty much made to go along with the Batman and Robin deluxe set from DC Direct. And you get that from this picture on the back where all the figures are together. Side by side, these guys are pretty awesome and they look great. They look great on the shelf, and they're really a nice sort of Silver Age action figure collection that sits in my collection overall. And Wonder Girl, DC Direct line action figures. They came with this really cool stand. They have like pegs that hold them up. They don't have a lot of articulation. They've got a couple joints here, in the arms, and then they've got like this half joint that we see a lot of times in highly articulated figures, but they don't have bendable elbows, which tends to give them, and their knees don't bend, and their hips don't bend. So really, these tend to be very sculptural because they don't have to worry about these hip joints. See a little bit of the box on the back here, Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl, and then some of the other sets that were available at the time. Strongly tied to the comics, they have a very comic book kind of feel. The sculpts on them are actually really good, but maybe a little too good. There's a lot of attention to the female form. There was this guy that I went to college with. Every time he'd get an assignment to be like, oh, you have to, draw something that inspires you, it would be a bunch of naked women and half naked women. And that was it. We got to get that guy to do this sculpt for these, because that's his specialty, is one thing. One of my art teachers would tell him, well, if you can get into this kind of work, yeah, you'll be able to do really well. But if you have any other commercial desires to do anything other than draw naked women, not so much. I actually think they may have become aware that these figures were a bit risque. And they're like, let's put these really ugly dresses in here that we can cover them up with if people don't like that. They had these golden lassos, and the Wonder Woman one this is what it looks like now. It's all twisted and taken out. That's because Brianna, when she was 8, she went into work with me. She had all my DC Direct figures, and she was playing with Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl. This is how she left Wonder Woman's golden lasso. Thanks, Brianna. We got Darkseid and Orion, and this was a box set. Darkseid is Orion's father. There's a whole bunch of weird stuff going on with him. They're pretty basic figures. The coolest thing about Darkseid is that he has these glow eyes, so his main sort of evil power is associated with his eye beams. He's very heavily featured in the comics with his red glowing eyes. It's unusual to have something electronic like that in a DC Direct figure, so give them some props for doing that. I think they sacrificed everything else to do it because this guy is basically a statue. His arms move, but that's about it. He doesn't have any joints in his leg. His knees are locked. He's basically a statue. Orion is basically Darkseid's son. Darkseid sends him to New Genesis, which is a peaceful planet. He's like the power lord of Apocalypse, which is a planet that's basically super into death and destruction. And these two planets are at war, and then they end up sort of pitted against each other. And Orion uses his flying harness here and fights his father. So it's like a little father-son outing that's gone bad. And then it came with this head, and that's the face of rage of Orion. Yeah, a little dark. He also, his helmet removes, so you can change his head out. No, he just looks like a normal dude.
Dad, you're such a jerk. I don't even get why. You mean you don't even show up. I never even see you anymore. And then you just come around and try to take over a planet. It's not cool, Dad. Everybody just wants to be doing cool stuff. And you're oh, look, I'm gonna try to take over. It's not cool, Dad. You're no son of mine, boy.
So, yeah, the only way they stand up is if they hold hands. This was the box set. Obviously, I took the figures out of it for Darkseid and Orion. They're pretty basic. A lot of these boxes that were in the DC Direct sets were nothing special. I think they were really intended to kind of increase the perceived value of basically two figures because they weren't cheap at the time. Obviously, now they would be relatively inexpensive. But you get a little bit of a sense of it. They include a little bit on the storyline here between Darkseid and Orion, which is, I think, good. And then, these would be featured on the comic book shelves along with comics, and it just created a more interesting environment for comic sales. So this really what this was all about, was supporting the sales of comics and having collectibles that go along with it. We've got Green Arrow and Speedy with the Arrow car and the Arrow plane. These guys are actually not too bad. I really think there's some sculptural issues going on their faces. Actually, I see a little bit of damage on Speedy. His hat has broken. These guys have joints on their knees, but they don't have any joints on their hips, though. They've got a little bit more articulation than the normal figures, but they're definitely consistent with the comics in the Silver Age. Basically, Batman and Green Arrow were kind of followed by the same people, and so they made a Batmobile version for Green Arrow and a Batplane version for him as well. There's a lot of different versions of the Arrow car. In one instance, the Arrow car actually was the same as the aeroplane, and it flew, but there were a lot of upgrades. Green Arrow was, at one point, like rich, like Bruce Wayne, and he had all this stuff, and then I guess he lost his fortune, yada, yada, yada. They destroyed the Arrow car. Wanted to share a little bit on the packaging for Green Arrow and Speedy. You see a little bit on the callouts for the Arrow car and the aeroplane. You get a little bit of a shot of these guys together. This one's pretty decent, and then obviously they show you all the other action figures that you can get. Okay, so these guys came with a bunch of trick arrows. You've got the grenade arrow. This one's always one of my favorites. It's the boxing glove arrow. It's like gonna punch you with an arrow. It's ridiculous. You've got the boomerang arrow. I'm not sure how this functions. It doesn't make sense, but it's still fun. You've got some kind of drill arrow, like this would like drill in or something. And then this one is probably my most confusing one. It looks like Harry Potter glasses. So Harry Potter glasses arrow, but it's probably handcuffs. You know, you shoot the arrow and then they're handcuffed, which is pretty cool. But I still think it looks like Harry Potter glasses, so I'm going to go with that. All right, so I hope you enjoyed seeing a little more detail on the toys that I have shared today. And please like and subscribe and check it out for the next couple toy stops we're going to have. We're going to talk about even more cool toys. Thanks so much.